Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy for you guys that joined us this evening. Obviously, my co-host, usual co-host, Ms. Jocelyn Turner, is not present for reasons that she's delighted to have. She's out celebrating somewhere on her vacation. She has to take some time off at some point in time, and so I'm here today. I'm the pinch hitter for her. What we are looking at today is we're want to discuss the subject matter of getting youth out to vote this very important upcoming election. With joining us this evening is because I'm always the ladies first is Miss Regina Newkirk Rucci. She is a. I'll let you, Miss Rucci, tell us about who you are and what you represent.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. As you said, my name is Regina Newkirk Rucci. I'm the Director of Equity for 90 Forward. 90 Forward is a racial equity and justice nonprofit based here in Jacksonville with a vision to an end to racism so that all people thrive.
Okay, cool. And I think the rest of our listeners probably are very aware Mr. Tony Hill, both by his nature of his former position as a state representative, and he's also been on this podcast before, and he's also a good friend. And so, needless to say, I'm going to ask Tony Hill to introduce himself, but I think most of you know him. But Mr. Hill.
Thank you so much, Dr. King. Tony Hill, community activist.
Well, I guess that makes two of us, even though you call me Dr. Kane. There's two, at least two, maybe three, maybe four community activists on this podcast. I think tonight's subject matter is one that has, be quite frank with you, has been bothering me for a while because, you know, in 2020 when Joe Biden got elected, you know, that was a high youth vote turnout to help get him elected. And I think most of us realize that that's a much needed, I'm going to call it commodity. There's a much needed commodity coming up in this election to do the same, getting the youth vote out. But there's been much discussion amongst my friends, my behind the scene guy, my co-host. There's a lot of discussion that has been going on as to how do we accomplish that? So, but my first thing is, Miss Newkirk Rucci. Can I just call you Miss Rucci?
Just call me Regina.
Regina, tell me about 904 Ward and your position there.
So, like I said, we're a local nonprofit. So we're not out campaigning for individual candidates, but what we are trying to do really is to ensure that people are registered and educated, because we need to know what we're voting for, who stands for what kinds of decisions are being made by our politicians. And I think one of the things that's going to be really key in igniting youth voters is connecting the vote to their lives. And politicians have done this intentionally, right? There's been a big disconnection. And you have to understand that if you don't like how much you're getting paid, if you don't like how housing prices have gone up, for instance, the Florida legislature put into place a ban last session that prevents any county from having rent control. So now when you get your rents doubled, tripled, etc., there were a couple of counties who were trying to prevent that from happening. State legislators voted, nope, no county can do that. You have to understand that your vote matters for your everyday life. And we have got to do a better job of connecting the issues to the vote.
You know, one of the problems I have with what we've done in the past is that, I mean, as a voting bloc, especially as Black voters, but maybe even as youth voters, we tend to go out every 4 years, and then we want to go out and vote in the big election, but not so much in these local voting. Mr. Hill, how important is doing these local elections and voting for local individuals or local people, positions? How important is that to our overall success in terms of, however you want to put it, the direction that the country is headed, or whether you want to continue that direction or switch up or whatever it may be? How important is that for our listeners to understand?
Well, I would say ditto to everything Regina has just said. We know that the 2024 election, the top of the ticket, but a lot of stuff happens at the local level. A lot of stuff happened. For example, the stadium. The elected officials were so focused on the 300 million till we never did really have a real decent discussion on what's in the 1.4 billion. So they did as we used to say in football, they fake left and went right on us.
Yeah.
And so we're out there now trying to figure out, okay, they kept saying something about 300 million going to the east side. Well, when we peeled back the onion, it wasn't 300 million going to the east side. It was only 30 million. So again, as Regina just broke that down to you from 904 forward, is that we cannot afford to sit out this election. So let's talk about the Florida legislature. The reason why they do the things they do over there, because they have a 2/3 voting block over there that they don't even have to. I mean, we had bless Angie and some of the rest of them that was sitting all down there in the foyer there of the chamber. They say, hey, get mad and all that. All they did was chamber that thing right back together and went right on back to business as usual, because we are not voting. Now, when I was in the legislature, Brother Kane, we had the advantage of almost 600,000 or 800,000 votes. Well, guess what? They done flipped it now.
Yeah.
They got almost 1 million more voters than we have. So that's why DeSantis acts like he acts. Because what is happening is we have allowed these people to turn Florida into a free state. No vaccine, everything anti. So these folks who are military, they're leaving their wives coming to Florida because they have bought into the hype. So what a friend of mine told me today, Bishop McKissick told me today, because I told him I was going to be on this panel tonight. He said, Tony, we got to talk about the historic perspective, that we don't spit in the face of the people who paid a price for you and I, especially me, to serve in the legislature for 17 years. That was not a grant 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. That's in our lifetime. And then we got to talk about the communal part of it. Everything we do is politics. Everything. Our whole life is centered around politics. As I was trying to come on today to talk with y'all, I mean, we got people that look like me and you talking about we don't see a difference. Are you crazy? What do you mean you don't see a difference? This man has been indicted on 34 counts. 34. And then he's trying to block other folks because remember now, as president, you get to appoint federal judges for life. For life.
And suggest Supreme Court judges. But Ms. Rucci.
Yeah. But I'm not even going to the Supreme Court yet. Let's just go to the federal. I mean, they got all kind of ways to block us. See, they don't block us in terms of constitutional officers in Florida. All of them are Republican. The legislature. When I was in the House in 92 through 2000, because I was in that first legions of what we call term limit group.
Mm-hmm.
we had 80 to their 40, because it's 120 of them. Now they don't flipped it. They don't flipped it.
Right. They got the majority in that house, obviously, and they got a super majority.
They got super majority in the Senate.
Yep. I said house, but I meant Senate. Well, let me ask you this, Ms. Rucci. So why is it this crucial, and not to switch from state to national, because in Florida they seem to be very much intertwined with state and national as far as it relates to one of the candidates, for sure. Why is it so important why is it so crucial for young voters to vote in this presidential election? And what impact can this have on the outcome in future of policies? Even though Mr. Hill alluded to some of the statewide and local impact it has, what about national? What are you guys looking at? What do you see from the 904 forward?
So again, I want to be very clear, because we are a nonprofit organization, that I can't get into political candidates, but I can talk about some issues that we're seeing. And so I was at a conference this past weekend, and one of the panelists said, it is a very real possibility that I am speaking about the last election I will be able to vote in.
Yep.
And I think this is one of these situations where when people are stating things, we need to take them at face value. And so if we have people, you need to vote for the issues and understand what that means. Like we need to understand what being in a dictatorship means. We need to understand what being in an authoritarian government means, right? This is that there's some things that are being proposed that are fascist. And so it's extremely important for us to be informed. Now, I think this is something that we have to really talk about with younger voters. Because
brother K, let me just put that down where the goats can get it. Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking about democracy. Democracy. That's what we're talking about here. That's what the speaker was trying to tell the group that Regina was with. We're talking about democracy here, not autocracy. Democracy. This man already showed you that he loves to be in bed with dictators.
He not only showed you, he told you what he want to do.
Right. I mean, he has shown his hand. And I was listening to Urban View today, Regina. And I'm gonna tell you how scary this is. The question was raised, if your pastor invited Trump to the church, would you leave? So let's say we had about 25 people come on. 15 of them said yes, they would leave. 10 of those folks said, I trust the pastor. So if the pastor feels like that's okay, it's okay. What in the hell are we going to, Dr. K? What is going on here? I mean, this man holding up a Bible upside down. Then he tries to quote the scripture talking about 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. Come on, folks. I mean, he did this at Liberty University. The kids almost fell out laughing.
Well, the one thing I will say is that a lot of these kids some kids are not necessarily into religion in the generation like we were in. Okay, that's a difference in how they feel about it. But let me ask you this, Miss, given what he just said, why is it so crucial because I know you're the not-for-profit, so I got to keep questions for you to keep it as neutral as possible so it doesn't threaten your not-for-profit status. But why is it so crucial for young voters to participate in this presidential election, and what impact can their votes have on the outcome of future policies?
Well, we have to remember that Florida keeps being won by very narrow margins. And we still have so many people who aren't registered to vote. So, and who don't vote, right? So when we start talking about young voters, they have the ability to swing an election, period.
Right.
They do. And I think there are a couple of things that we have to talk about that are very important when we start talking about young voters. So, for instance, the connection with history, I will tell you that's the number one reason I vote. There are too many people who died. I am a Black woman. There are way too many people who died for me to have the right to vote. And I heard stories, my parents, there was a cross burned in my grandparents' yard. My parents went to segregated schools. They participated in local demonstrations at their college. So this was very fresh for me, but the younger voters don't have that connection to history the same way we do. I think the other thing that's really important to realize is that that's not how they're getting their information. It wouldn't occur to me to go get my political information from TikTok, but that's where a lot of younger voters are getting it. Social media is dominating the message. And depending on what you're clicking on, depending on what's popular in your feeds, those algorithms are giving you specific information and they are not necessarily getting the whole story. So that's why it's really going to be important for us to get the proper education out about what candidates stand for and what how they voted.
You know, one of our listeners just commented is like, the pastor should not be the determining factor for anyone's vote. It's a personal decision. And you just alluded to that in terms of people that are deciding your vote for you or helping you decide your vote in a more biased, maybe in a biased fashion, by the mere fact that you did not research who you're voting for and where their stance, the stances that they'll take, and so on and so on. So with that being said, what are the current trends in youth voter turnout?
Well, I would say to you, Brother Kane and Sister Regina, all we have to do is look at what Biden is done with student loans. Hello. He has forgiven almost $1 trillion in student loans. When the other guy was in office, he was cutting back taxes for the rich. So what we're doing now is we're reversing the Robin Hood. This is reverse Robin Hood. And so the people are talking about the gas prices, or people talking about food. Well, you got to remember, the same people who own these companies that we're going to buy this stuff from is Trump supporters. Of course it's going to be higher. It's only natural, Brother Kane.
Well,
in other words, working people and working families, people of color, never is going to get ahead if we keep flip-flopping and forgetting to take our medication. We keep flip-flopping back and forth because they got good sound bites. And then we got people, as Regina just said, that can pop up through on TikTok and all that. That's why the politicians want to get rid of TikTok. Because they know that's what young people are glued into. So you get the Taylor Swifts of the world. You get the Kelsey and them of the world. All these folks, each candidate is trying to get them to talk their language. And you'll just be surprised sometime, because guess what? At the end of the day, they're going to still be able to go to Morton Steakhouse. They're going to still be able to go to all those other places where you and I are trying to find a nice, economical dinner to go and eat, because we're still working every day. So what we say to people, we just left a conference of the AFL-CIO. What we're saying is, these people don't care nothing about working people. They don't care nothing about college students. That's why you see the kids doing what they're doing, because of Palestine and what's going on in Israel. We got a guy right now in New York, Congressman Bowman, the Israel PAC, they CPAC, has put billions and millions of dollars to take him out because he don't demand that they do a ceasefire. These folks got political action committees, Brother Kane, Sister Regina. They have political education committees. And let me tell you something, we haven't seen nothing yet. These folks are ready to spend whatever it takes so they can continue to keep the money that they make, to keep doing what they're doing. And they want two classes of people, the haves and the have-nots.
Ms. Ruthie, you know, that was a point brought up in terms of when we look at you mentioned, well, historically, maybe not you, but I forgot which one. I think might have been Mr. Hill. Historically, they've forgotten about where we come from, you know, and a lot of these young folks that they can't connect to that.
Right.
So what do you guys do at 904 Forward? What do you do to try to help overcome that barrier of knowledge so that they are aware? Because you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been, is what my grandma used to say, but I'm sure you guys heard that before. So what do you guys suggest we do on that, in that thing?
Well, again, I think you're going to have to.
Sister Regina, hold on a minute. Let me help Doc out. 904 has traveled across the breadth and length of this South. They've been to Birmingham. They've been to Montgomery. They've been down to Mims, Florida, to Harry T. Moore. They are showing these young people, this is the reason why you're able to travel like you're traveling. Next week, on the 1st and the 2nd, I'm going to be in St. Augustine, emceeing the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. The 60th anniversary. 60 years ago, we could not go and live in a hotel in St. Augustine. Dr. King them had to knock that door down for us to walk in. So I just wanted to bring that forward because that's what 904 is all about. We got to teach our kids the history because guess what? The folks in Tallahassee say you can't talk about Black history. No, we can't make kids feel uncomfortable. Hell, we felt uncomfortable. Our ancestors felt uncomfortable. Go ahead, Sister Regina.
Well, and I also think that we're going to have to start pushing back on that narrative. We need to start addressing that we feel uncomfortable not talking about these things. So how is that? Let's take that to court. But we're going to have to start doing that. But again, you know, as Brother Tony just pointed out, we're trying to bring that history to our community. We do sponsor trips to Montgomery, and we even had students, high school students, write a Black history curriculum that came out of that trip to Montgomery. And what was the impetus behind that? They were like, how come we didn't know this stuff? How come we are now 16, 17, 18 years old and we are seeing this information for the first time? And we are now in a state that is trying to restrict that even more. Votes matter. And if we don't like what these politicians are doing, we got to vote them out. They got to go. And so we need to take a stand. And again, you got to know what, so we talk about education. The education is history, but that is also what they're doing right now. And if you think that it's appropriate that we talk about there being slaves benefiting from slavery, if you think it's appropriate that we have Frederick Douglass, an approved curriculum stating that slavery wasn't all that bad because everybody did it, that is what our current state politicians have said is okay to teach in Florida schools. That's the kind of stuff we got to know. That's the kind of stuff we have to say no to. So we have to really educate young voters about the history and the current, tying it together.
Education is what I'm hearing from both of you guys.
And another thing is well, when we say education, for too long, education has had this here broad picture. When we say education, you're talking sitting in a classroom with a book and a teacher. It is amazing to me how I hear so often people talk about TikTok and these other social medias. When I talk to young folks, what I hear is stark and shocking. They grew up in an educational system that taught them to receive information in 3 to 5 minute segments, bites. But now we want to teach them a class and a curriculum. And they're not on board with it. Mm-hmm. They're not open to it. They're not going to hear it. Brother Hill mentioned Urban View. I was listening to that show as well. And what they also said is we don't have a problem with accomplishments. We have a problem with getting the information to the people. Mm-hmm. We as a whole, African Americans and officials who could benefit from African American votes do a poor job of reaching the people that we say we want to help.
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to that, I'm thinking a lot of history should be taught at home to help these kids understand and appreciate from whence they came, what role their mother, their grandmother, and their great-grandmother, the roles and the issues that they faced in their time. And we don't talk about it enough at home. I mean, no. That's one of the things that help with education, because we can't depend on the public school system to educate our youth. Mm-hmm. Many of the people, young voters voting in this election, were 10 years old with the last time the youngest candidate ran. I almost said the oldest candidate. The last time the youngest candidate ran, some of them was just 10 years old, because we're looking at what we 8 years down the road. When I say initially ran is what I should have said, not last ran, but initially ran. And we're 8 years down the road, and and during their time, I don't think they see what actually was accomplished, as Mr. Hill said, what was accomplished during their time, his time, and stuff that he promised, stuff that he wanted to do, was not able to do, that we were able to stifle in terms of a group of the Democratic Party and a group of people, versus this time what they say they are gonna do. Not no promises. It might be a promise, but he actually has stated everything that he wants to do, and I think that is probably contrary to the mission, one of the primary mission of 904 Forward.
Well, okay. I mean, number one is I think you have to believe it, and then number two, I think you have to have people know what he said, right? Yes. He's got this whole Project 2025, and we talk to people, they've never heard of it. So a lot of it is, again, getting that information out. And I don't think the message has to change, but I do think the method does. Right. I grew up, politicians came to church, right? And again, I think this history of pastors having a lot of influence over congregations. I remember that's how you came and you talked to the Black community. You did it in church. That doesn't make sense in 2024, right? We don't have as many people in church. People are a lot more skeptical. The younger folks, that's not where they're getting their information from. So we're going to have to change that up. And I think one of the things that we keep doing in the Black community is we keep doing it the same way. It won't work if you're 22 years old.
You have diversity in the population. You need that diversity and deliverance of messages to the population. Mr. Hill, what are the challenges that prevent young folks from voting? And then I'll ask you, Ms. Rucci, to chime in on it.
Well, I think it's not so much the challenge, it's just the will to do it. Most people don't want to be corrected. They want to be connected. Okay. And I think the way we do that is by talking about issues that are paramount to them while they're in college, when they get out of college, and to vote in their best interest. Our thing is that, as Sister Regina just said, we got to get people off the TikTok. And as we say at church, we got to get them out of a book and into this book. And the book is about our faith and what we've been through. The same thing that Israel is going through now, we went through that in slavery. Right? And then the question begs to us, how do we get these young people engaged? And I would just simply say we got to keep funding 904 Forward. We got to keep funding it. We can't allow donors to decide, oh, that's a good program. Dr. King, the medical society should be funding 904. All these black doctors we have making 6 figures or whatever they got to make. We got to put back in what we have been able to benefit from in order for it to keep going for our great-great-grandkids. This is not about a generation. We talking about great-great. I got a great-grandson. And I'll be damned if I'm going to leave that one day he'll grow up and say, okay, during this period of 2024, how did that happen? How did a convicted felon get back in office? That's something that's going to be on us. And I would submit to you that the young people who are saying there's not a difference, we got to be able to share with them what the difference is. We got to stop this busy life that we're in. And I understand, Doc, you're busy, but thank God for you doing this podcast. People are seeing this. This is what we got to do. And we got to do it almost block by block, house by house, in order for us to have the same lifestyle. Our kids today, this abortion issue, the women don't even have a right to choose what they're going to do with their own body. When I was in the legislature, let me say this, because I got a hard stop I got to do here. When I was in the legislature, one of the ladies came to me. She said, Senator Hill, I was looking at your bio. I see where you're a deacon at your church and blah, blah, blah. So I know you're going to be with us. I said, be with you on what? She said, about this abortion. I said, first of all, I have no business up under a woman's dress. First of all, let me get this clear for you right now. I don't have any business, because see, I found out one thing. If I can't ovulate, I don't need to be regulating. Hello. Sister Regina, did you hear what I just said? If I can't ovulate, I don't need to be regulating. I don't need to be regulating. So the lady just ran out my office. She said, I just applaud him. See, we got to keep remembering is that I come out of the labor movement. And the first thing, Dr. King, that I used to tell the people on the floor when I got the mic, had I not been in the labor movement, excuse the expression, this shit y'all saying up here, I believe it. If I had not been in the labor movement.
Well, let me say this, and then Miss Regina, I want you to go ahead and give the comment about the question I asked Nichu, or on this. Mr. Hill, not all kids, we talked about religion earlier, and I heard where you fell back on religion. Are we going to miss out on a lot of these kids that don't go to church and maybe not believe in the same religion that you do or other Christians do? They may be Muslims, whatever, they may be atheists, but we miss out on having them an avenue by which they can relate to what's going on by simply going strictly, and I understand your teaching, but by going strictly, I'm being the devil's advocate here, by going strictly along the religious line. Ms. Brucci.
Here's the thing, Brother King. We have to have influence in the spheres that we're in. I happen to be a faith person. I'm a deacon at our church. So young people are watching me. They're watching what I'm doing.
Young people in the church. Sure.
Right. I'm talking about people at the church, but also people in the community, because I'm also in the community. I'm not just in the church. I'm in the church on Sunday. I'm probably there on Wednesday, but because of COVID and stuff there, so I'm there, and then I teach Sunday school. So I got to be an example for folks to let them know that, hey, that it says in the scriptures that he did not give us a spirit of fear, F-E-A-R. right? False thing acting as though it's real. So I got to be able to speak truth to power. And speaking that truth to power is going over my history of serving in the legislature, being a public official, being in the labor movement. I got to make sure that when I leave this earth and I go on to heaven, that I did everything I could do. As one songwriter said, let the works I done speak for me.
Well, I can relate to that as far as, having, grew up in the church and so on and so on. But there are many kids that have not, but their vote is just as critical in terms of trying to overcome.
Dr. Kane, you're not gonna get an argument with me on that.
Okay.
All right. I'm just saying to you that I have to be a leader in the spheres that I'm in. And the spheres that I happen to be in, the spheres I have to be in is faith. F-A, for all I thank him.
Right.
I mean, so somebody else is going to have to do that other part.
So, Ms. you guys encountering people of multiple faith, no faith, atheists. You're trying to recruit all of them. Is that not correct?
We are. We're trying to make sure that everyone's engaged. And I think that you have to be a leader in the spheres you're in. I totally agree with what Brother Tony's saying there. I do think we have to recognize all of the spheres, and we've got to activate folks in those different spheres, right? Because you do have some folks who are on TikTok and have not stepped a foot in church. How are we reaching them? And maybe that's not Brother Tony doing that, but who is? And we've got to be very intentional with making sure that we've got somebody in all of the spheres.
One of the viewers said we have to reach these people where they are. And if social media is their space, and I'm thinking that's what both of you guys are saying. Social media is their space, we meet them there. Location doesn't matter, okay? But the message is the priority, is what she's saying. And also, if you visit any church on Sunday, the average age of the parishioners is about 45. Unfortunately, young people fill the pews when attending funerals. Any commentary?
Here's what I would say to you on that. We're not going to win everybody.
Nope.
But the folks that we are in a conversation with, or we going down the road and we hear somebody come on the radio with something stupid, we need to call right in and correct that. That's not true.
Challenge.
That's how we have to challenge people where we are, and we have to let them know that there's been a dear price paid for us to just even have the right to vote. I'm not gonna allow a couch to take away the benefits that I know this administration has done. Now, have they did everything I want? No. Just like on the other side, they haven't did everything that Trump wanted. But I'm not going to sit back and allow in 24 this orange guy that's been indicted 34 times to go back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. So every weekend, I'm going to be doing something, speaking truth to power, and then with God's blessing in terms of our people, I really believe this, that he will not allow, because remember now, and I know we don't want to get too churchy, but I do want you to know when Lazarus was dead, Jesus could have raised Lazarus where he was at, but he came to the tomb and he told them to do something. Roll the stone away. Dr. King, we got to do something.
I'm not disagreeing
with that. We got to do something.
And I think that's what 904 Forward is trying to do. Is to do some things, to do something. So, with that being said, Ms. Rucci, what are the successful strategies that 904 Forward is trying to implement in terms of getting out that youth vote?
Well, I want to follow up on something that Brother Tony just said, because I think it's really important, and it's something that we have to talk about.
Okay.
One of the things that we're seeing in the trend with the younger voters is, I don't like XYZ that this person did, so I'm not gonna vote.
Right.
And this whole belief that you got to be 100% in with somebody, I do not like 100% of the things that my husband does. I don't.
Right.
Right. But I like the majority of what he does. So I'm going to stick with him. And so we have to have this understanding that we aren't going to get 100%. And you have to be able to compare. If you like 80% of what one person did, and you like 5% of what the other person did, you still need to vote. Even if this person isn't 100% where you were, you disagree with them on one issue or another, you still got to, because if you don't vote and you get the 5% person, then where are you going to be? And I think having some conversations, particularly with younger voters, in that manner, because we are hearing so much of that. Oh, I don't like this person's position on this, so I'm going to vote for them. And it's a hard, because they did this one thing, they're not going to get my vote at all. And then taking yourself out of the arena, taking votes away, may also really ensure that the other person really is elevated. So making sure that we talk to young voters in that way, making sure that they understand that not voting can oftentimes be a vote for the other person.
Yeah.
One thing I will say I'm going to say this real quick, Tyrone, I'll let you chime in. One thing I will say is back in the year 2000, when Gore versus Bush, the Bush 2, took place, the most minuscule amount of voters made a difference. 500, okay, is what they narrowed it down to.
In what state?
This state.
That's right.
In this state, Florida. You're right. I'm happy you made sure I mentioned that. The thing that I see with that, or what keeps reminding me about that, is that we had third-party candidates step up, okay? And I know, Ms. Newkirk, Ms. Rucha, you can't comment particularly on who to vote for, but we had third-party candidates step up. I remember not liking necessarily 100% of both candidates, and I was tempted to vote for, what's his name, Ralph Nader, and some of the other guys that was out there. I forgot the other people that were there, but I thought about voting for them, and then I still went on ahead and cast my vote for the Democratic Party at that time, a person at that time, Al Gore. If you think about it, we probably never would have elected another Republican president along those lines. We may not have to deal with climate change as we're dealing with now, because his proposal at that time, his major agenda at that time, was dealing with climate change. Now we're dealing with an issue that we should have dealt with back in the year 2000. It's not our kids' fault, our grandkids' fault. It's our fault, because many of us didn't get out and vote and made that kind of change or influence on voting that could have affected us, and we not be facing one of the dilemmas we're facing right now, which is driving a lot of these kids, because we're leaving them in a hell of a mess, and that is climate change. Okay.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to say, and I wanted to make sure that our audience heard one of the things that Brother Hill said, and that was when we were talking about the religious. He said that he's doing what he could do. That's his space.
Right.
There is an expectation that of those who are not of faith and are in those, they still have a responsibility to communicate to the ones that they have influence over, in order to be able to move them to vote. The second thing that I heard was, and I continue to hear this, is that we heard someone say that, well, there are youth are saying, well, I'm not voting for them because of this one thing that they did. Well, what you are maybe missing in that is that one thing is what they've heard. They're not hearing
the rest of what they did,
the other 90%. So
yes,
we still have a challenge with getting out information. And I heard it on Urban View, and I hate to mention that again, but they said is good news doesn't sell. It's harder to sell good news than it is to sell bad news.
Right. And
And
the
so
media
that's
does a good job of bringing up all that damn bad news.
Yep, absolutely.
And as one of our listeners said, and both of you guys have said, challenging these false narratives is important. And we are correcting in front of young people that needs to hear the truth. We should be making sure that we are correcting in front of young people that need to hear the truth and get their votes. I'm gonna say one last thing, and then I'm asking our guest to step in. Tyrone, do we have a history moment?
Yeah, I was texting you in the private chat. You never responded.
I'm sorry about it. We'll go to our history moment in a quick second. The one thing I was going to say, now let's go ahead and go to because I can see that in my summation.
All right, so
each week we have what we call a Black History moment in terms of presenting people in circumstances in which we feel and find important to Black history. Tyrone has done an excellent job in the past, so we're going to let him go on ahead and go for it right now.
And I'm going to preface this by saying each week and every show has its own tenor and its own challenges. Well, finding someone who has been a paramount historical figure in igniting young African Americans to vote was more of a challenge than I had originated. So what I've done is I put together a compilation that is actually doing a job of explaining just what we've gone over here today.
Okay.
In a succinct video that gives us ability to talk about what is needed, what can be done. So everyone, I hope you'll enjoy this.
Welcome back to History Makers Minute, where we delve into the moments and movements shaping our world. Today, we're turning our attention to the rising wave of African American youth engagement in the political process, specifically their increasing participation in voting. The 2020 and 2022 elections saw a significant surge in young African American voters, driven by a passionate desire for change and a deep sense of civic duty. Organizations like the NAACP Youth and College Division, When We All Vote, and the Black Youth Vote Coalition have been instrumental in this movement. These groups have mobilized young voters through targeted outreach, voter registration drives, educational initiatives, and social media campaigns. Despite this progress, challenges remain. Voter suppression tactics, misinformation campaigns, and a feeling of disillusionment with the political system can deter young people from voting. However, the victories are undeniable. The increased youth turnout has impacted election outcomes, pushing for policies that address issues like racial justice, climate change, and economic inequality. The future of American politics. If fewer young people vote, the future of American politics looks bleak. Young voices are crucial for a representative democracy that reflects the diversity and concerns of its citizens. Without youth participation, policies may not address the needs of future generations. 5 steps forward. To improve Black youth involvement in voting and politics, we need to 1. Expand civic education. Teach young people about their rights, the political process, and the impact of their vote. 2. Combat misinformation. Equip young people with the tools to identify and counter false narratives that discourage voting. 3. Address voter suppression. Actively work to dismantle barriers that prevent young people, especially in marginalized communities, from casting their ballots. 4. Amplify youth voices. Create platforms for young people to express their opinions, concerns, and policy ideas. 5. Engage with authenticity. Connect with young voters on their terms, using language and channels that resonate with them. Conclusion. The growing political engagement of African American youth is a powerful force for change. By addressing the challenges and building on their successes, we can ensure that their voices are heard and that the future of American politics is inclusive, equitable, and responsive to the needs of all citizens. Outrow Music. Host, thanks for joining us on History Makers Minute. Tune in next time for another glimpse into the stories that define our times.
Wow, Tyrone, that was pretty good. I mean, it kind of stated, Ms. Newkirk, Rucci, it kind of stated some of the things that you guys were really
absolutely
succinct in his presentation. You know, that was great. What are some of the strategies you guys, successful strategies you guys are using to do just what Tyrone just demonstrated on the movement as it relates to getting youth out to vote?
Well, again, I think this work is done in partnership. As we said, we're all community activists. So we're trying to work with other community activists that are in different spaces, be it the Northside Coalition or Equality Florida, whomever we can work with and partner with to really ensure that we are connecting with people, going to community events, really trying to make sure that we are talking about the issues that matter in a way that connects to the lives of people who are 20, 25, 30, 35, young professionals, and really ensure that they know the importance of voting. Because your vote matters. And I will tell you now, they wouldn't be spending this much money. They wouldn't be trying to put this much legislation, prevent you from voting, requiring all these things, putting all these stipulations in place if it didn't. So whenever there's legislation and attention and money being spent to try to stop you from doing something, that means it matters. It makes the difference. We have to make that connection for them as well.
Yeah. So because we have to, we feel the need to ramp up, which is what one of our listeners is saying, ramp up every message in every medium is what we're looking for. I think that's what you and Mr. Hill both are relating, preaching for right now. I call it preaching to use his vernacular that they're reaching out to right now. What is your call to action for some of us, the listeners, for some of the listeners? What would be your call to action, Ms. Rucci?
Well, I would tell you, number one thing is you got to know who's on the ballot and what they have done and what they stand for. Be an informed voter. I know lots of times we pay a lot of attention to the presidential election, not necessarily informed by it, but we pay attention to that one. There are lots of other people who will be on that ballot as well. Know, research what they did. The League of Women Voters tends to be very good about getting a lot of information out about people, but go back and see how they voted on issues that matter to you, whether they were there. A lot of folks are ducking out and not even voting at all. So that's not on record. And I'm not voting for people who don't show up for work. So, we need to be knowledgeable about what our elected officials are doing and really do our homework.
And when you say a lot of people not voting at all, I think you were referencing some of the politicians that are in office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the current incumbents. So to avoid a sticky issue, they just don't vote. And that's not doing your job.
Matt Gaetz, I think, is one of them. He got put forth all these, he's been on TV almost every day, looks like, 400, 500 interviews. Not one bill before Congress has been put forth on behalf of the citizens. Not one.
There are a lot of people. That's a big thing. A lot of people duck out on big votes. And I think particularly in the state legislature, that's a place where you should look.
And one of the things I want to add to what Ms. Rucci just said is, as adults, when we're doing this research about these candidates, embrace the conversation with your children. Pull them into the conversation. Have them to explain to you what it is you're seeing and understanding from their point of view. Help them get involved in the process by understanding the process. It is oftentimes so easy to stay unengaged when you don't have information. If you just know a person's name, it's easy to say, well, I'm not voting for him. But when you know a person's name and what he did, you now have greater power to make a better decision.
I think that's hugely important. I mean, I'm the advocate that I am because that was dinner time conversation. And my parents were talking about what they were looking for, they were voting for, why it was important to vote, and what difference that makes. And so I think it's never too early to talk about it, but certainly with teenagers, and the people who are getting ready to be able to vote. We need to be having these conversations at home and talking about what matters to us and understanding what these people are doing and who they vote for. And then also contacting them. I have written several emails to my state legislators telling them how I felt about a bill. And then I followed up to see how they voted. So this is something where we have to take our power back.
Right.
Because we put them in office. And if people really believe that we were going to come out and vote, and we were going to vote according to how they voted, we would be getting some very different results.
And I have to remind people that, I serve to remind people that exactly what you're saying. And that is, if you don't participate, you have no reason to complain. But you may be complaining the loudest because this might be your last vote. If the wrong person gets in office, I know you can't say it, Ms. Rucci, but I can. The wrong individual gets in office, this may be the last time you even have to vote. You may not have any choice.
Well, and again, this is go research the issues. Now, if you are behind being having a dictator and
that's just
having things like the Department of Education removed, then that will tell you, that will inform who you vote for. But if those things matter to you and democracy matters to you, then you have to make different choices. And not voting isn't the choice to make. So we all need to be engaged. We all need to let our elected officials know because they work for us. So we need to let them know what it is we want.
And again, we must emphasize not just the national, but we also have to do local, because again, those local decisions impact us tremendously.
And I just want to take a moment. I think this is an important election. We need to vote. But the stuff that really impacts you, and truthfully, the really shady stuff always happens in non-presidential elections because
exactly. That's my point.
So we have to vote all of the time. So yes, we need to vote in the 2024 presidential election. Yes, we do. But we need to vote in the mayoral election, the gubernatorial elections, the state legislature, the city council, all of the local ones, because the real impact on your daily life that happens in the state and local elections. And
Republicans played the long game. The Democrats have not. Okay. And one of our viewers is saying just that. Democrats have to think of the long game when it comes to state legislators. And I'm sure he's referring to local. You look at the city council and the vote that they took the other day. I may or may not. I mean, my stance on that is for discussion, but that's not the concern I have the most. That is that the concern I have the most was made by people who were elected, but by the population, everybody participating. Okay, as many people as possible participating. That's why I have more concern about who gets elected and what they want to do for us locally. And not only that, when you look at a local election, it's not just by, again, the Jaguar Stadium, but local for me, I'm going to expand it to the state. We have a governor. Okay, that's not much different. Maybe worse, but still not much different. And we have to get out to get there. And Dr. Jones, definitely, and it's up on the screen now. If you don't believe us, read the 2025 plan, okay, that Republicans have put forth. Donald Trump claiming he, hadn't really looked at it, but he's endorsed it. I don't even want to say privately. Kind of tangentially, he's endorsed much of what's in that 2025 plan.
And this is, again, where it is incumbent upon us to be informed voters. We have to know what's happening. Oh, and I do also just want to make sure that all of your listeners know we are actually having a discussion tomorrow night on Zoom about this very topic. So igniting particularly Black and Latino voters, young Black and Latino voters. We want to talk about the ways that we're doing that and what the messaging is. And if anyone wants to weigh in on that, please register at www.90forward.org/events. It should be a really good discussion. And again, a lot more of what we're talking about here, because
An
it's
hour is
important.
not
We got to
enough.
get folks out. We got to get folks out this year.
And an hour is not enough. Read that email. Read that address again.
www.90forward.org/events.
Gotcha. We're going to put it up for our listeners to take a look at it. While Tyrone is getting that ready, I know he's getting ready to put it up there because that's what he does. Let me ask you to, unfortunately, an hour is never enough.
No.
Especially when people are so excited about the subject matter as yourself and Mr. Hill. You know, it's like you got to go at it. And truth be told, and Ms. Turner, she always keep me in line because I can get pretty excited about this topic. And I think I've done rather well moderate my behavior. I think Tyrone can probably attest to that because I can go off. But since I'm supposed to be the host and moderator, thought I'd just try to be a little bit less callous toward others.
I appreciate it. I thought you did a great job. I do know that since I'm here representing 90 Forward, I'm not as passionate as I might be
Right.
about some of these issues as well. Because then I might be talking about some people in some situations.
Right. I concur with you 100%. So I have to back off sometimes because my personal opinion, I tend to hold, not because I'm ashamed of it or because I fear for it, just because I want others to be able to get their message out more so than myself. With that, the hour, like I said, is never enough. We can always have you back, Ms. Rucci. We'll be looking forward to getting you back because actually we wanted to consider doing a series on the generational divide to voting and what's going on with our voting. So we will be coming back, approaching this subject matter again, especially through November, okay, and probably beyond, because then the next other 2 years will be coming. The 2 years later, we come up with another election, albeit local, pretty much simply local. We still need to keep the faith, keep looking forward, keep acknowledging what we're up against, and never ever forget about, well, I say never ever forget. I think that should say enough in terms of what we have. With that being said, I'd like for you to go on ahead. Mr. Hill had to get off, but Ms. Rucci, if you want to go ahead and give a final statement to our audience, I much appreciate it.
Be sure you're registered to vote. Be sure you tell other people to register to vote. And be sure you know who you're voting for. So do your research, find out the info, find out what's on their web pages, get some good non-biased sites to give you information, find out what they've done, what they stand for, who they are, and make sure it aligns with what you want in the office.
Absolutely excellent. And then the only thing I want to add, and then I'm gonna give my final thoughts, is that I tell my young folks that listen to me, my kids, they ain't got no choice, but I tell my kids that this is a war, okay? And what we're looking at now is just about one of the battles within the war. You know, obviously you have to, if you can win all the battles, that means you win the war. But sometimes you don't win, as you stated a little bit different earlier. You don't get everything you wanted to. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you might lose that war, but that does not mean you're going to lose the battle. As long as you keep marching forward and looking at what needs to be done, and then do it. Okay, that's what like that.
Well, I think that's just your eye on the prize, right?
Keep your eyes on the prize.
Yeah, and you will experience some losses, but you use those losses to inform you. Hey, how'd they win? Take their strategies and move forward. We need to do a little bit of switch and pivot and understand the situation. And yes, you won't win everything, but can you win the majority of it? And
Yes.
ultimately, is it really going to be better for you and your community? And I think
win
that's
that.
the questions that we have to ask.
Tyrone, you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, it is always important, first of all, for us to thank our guests. We appreciate you coming on to talk about this very important subject. It is obvious that it's impossible to cover all the things that are important in an hour's time. Dr. Kane has already said that. But it's also important that we realize that some important points were brought forth. And it's important that our listeners take that to heart. One of the things that strikes well with me was the concept of know who you're voting for. And then I chimed in and say, take that information and discuss it with your children. Discuss it with your friends. Discuss it with your social group. Discuss it on your Facebook. It is important that we impart information that is pivotal and important information for the success of us as a group in order to be able to get better representation. And it's not going to come easy. And it's not going to be free. But for those who don't realize, and I'm talking primarily to the youth, it never has been.
Nope.
But I will tell you, it has never stopped us before. So my comment is to all our viewers and all our listeners is to do your work and pass the information on to as many people as you can. May they be young or old, pass that information on.
Okay, so thank you. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's show, both especially Mr. Hill and Ms. Rucci. I really want to thank you guys for participating in today's topic as it relates to igniting young voters. Remember, your vote is your voice, and every election shapes the future you live in. Encourage the young people in your life, and that's for our older listeners, but our younger listeners, encourage your friends. Encourage them to register, stay informed, register to vote, stay informed, and make their voices be heard. Together, we can build a more inclusive, representative, and dynamic democracy. The last thing I want to say is join us next week for another episode of Pause for the Truth. And until the next time, I want you guys to stay engaged and keep pushing for the change. Can't leave without thanking our behind-the-scenes guy who was not behind the scenes today, but who helps make this podcast so effortlessly possible is Mr. Tyrone Jackson of Tyrone. Call Tyrone at Tyrone.net. Correct me, Tyrone, if I'm mistaken, since I don't have anything I can read.
Yes.
So
call Tyrone IT Services. You can look us up online at calltyrone.net.
All right, that's usually Ms. Turner's info to give, and also last thing, please make sure you go online and do Facebook, wherever it is, and just register or make sure that you join our podcast so that we can get our message out to more viewers. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining, and y'all have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth. We are grateful that you joined us today and hope you've gained valuable insights on our current topic. We look forward to having you with us next time as we explore trending issues in our community and discover ways to simplify life for you and your loved ones. Our dedicated panelists and staff are committed to sharing knowledge and serving our community. But now, we need your support. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and spread this valuable knowledge to others. Don't forget to invite your family and friends to tune in to our podcast every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. EST. Visit our website at www.pauseforthetruth.com and show your support by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and linking with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to email us with any questions, or concerns, or show topic recommendations at info@pauseforthetruth.com. I would also like to give thanks to our behind-the-scenes technology engineer, Tyrone Jackson, owner and operator of Call Tyrone. Net go to www. Call Tyrone. Net for a complete list of services. Thank you for being a part of Pause for the Truth. Together,